Yeah.
No, you're perfectly fine, sir. Do not worry about it. Greatly appreciate your time here today. And just as an FYI, unfortunately, Smitty could not sit there and be here today. So I'm supposed to, but I'm very excited to sit there and welcome back a mentor who has walked exactly the same line to where you're standing at right now. As many of you know, Steve is a veteran of the United States Navy and is a Naval Academy graduate who served leading sailors managing complex weapon systems across the globe. When we talk about transitioning, Steve is the gold standard. He has successfully translated his military leadership into high stakes roles at global powerhouses like Logitech and Applied Materials, where he is the master art of supply chain, e commerce, and business process improvement, stuff that I have experienced with the back. But Steve did not stop at the corporate ladder. For over 20 years, he's been an entrepreneur and a leader in the franchise world. First, the owner of his own enterprise, and now as the principal of the franchise consulting company. He specializes in helping people, especially veterans, take control of their own destiny. He understands that many of us, the W 2 world is just one option. And that discipline and strategic mindset, you gain in the service exactly what you need. So, with that being said, I have four more paragraphs, but I'm not going to say it. But Steve is here to help you understand, design that vehicle, whether you're looking to climb the corporate ladder or whether you're trying to sit there and bust out and do something on your own. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Steve Taylor, managing partner for BravoZulu. Let's give him a round of applause, please.
Boy, I sound important there. I should
You are,
record that and share it with my family.
we always record these sessions, so you're always welcome to. And what I'll do for you a little bit extra when I have some downtime tomorrow, I'll make the recording and I'll send it to you so that way you have it. How does that sound?
That
You've been here before, Steve. You chatted with us before. At the end of the day, I've caught one of your sessions, so I generally have a bunch of questions for you, but I'm going to sit there and kind of let you start out and sort of lead the way.
Sure. Yeah, what I'm trying to do is, so the last time I did this, um, I'm trying to get to the right screen on Zoom, so that's my first goal here. Um, what I did is Ernie just screwed up the introduction completely, accused me of being an Army veteran, and it was, frankly, it was a little embarrassing, and I had to spend about 5-10 minutes building my credibility back. But you nailed it, Clay. I appreciate it. The other thing I was going to say is instead of doing that, what I thought I would do is just give just some examples, and I'll tell you a little bit more about myself, and then I'll just tell you a little bit more about the type of work I do, how I help veterans, how I help people, and then hopefully I'm going to spend the majority of my time just giving you an example of one of the clients I work with, show you a couple example companies, and then we can go from there. Does that make
Fire
sense?
away. Time's yours, sir.
So, okay. So, first off, welcome. I mean, it's an exciting time for most of you. I, I got out of the Navy 30 years ago, and it seems like yesterday. I can remember the transition process, and I'm not going to complain, but it was a whole lot less sophisticated, and there seemed to be, certainly I couldn't find the tools that seem to be available now. So, so good on you for in participating with Seven Eagle, and I just wish everyone well. And that's kind of my philosophy. This isn't the things I do, the things I'm going to talk about. These are not for everybody, not even close, and I don't pretend they are. But for some people, for some very, very compelling reasons, they're a good option to look at. And again, I'm going to try and get very rapidly to some examples, and we can go from there. Can I share my screen?
You can do whatever you want. I have been told by Ernie to sit there and give you all the latitude in the world, sir. And of course, I had to make sure you were a Naval Academy graduate Being an Army guy, you know how those Air Force guys can be. They can be a little bit distracting sometimes.
That's good stuff. So wow, I'm my screen. I apologize for the technical difficulties here. I'm trying to um, well, shoot. So let's, how am I going to do this? Zoom, and then I got to share my screen, which is not coming easily to me right now. So, yeah, I pulled up my PowerPoint, and it immediately took over my prior screen as opposed to, well, you know what, guys, you're just gonna have to bear with what I have. Oh, here we go. Okay, there we go. You guys all see that
Yep.
brand presentations? Okay, so first off, let me just give you a high level overview perspective. What I do is I work with people, primarily veterans, not exclusively, to identify, or I should say, veterans that are interested in learning more about business ownership options. And the way I do that is I work with you up front. There's some online surveys I ask you to take. We spend maybe an hour on a Zoom call. I summarize and I share everything with my clients. It's very, very open kimono, so to speak. I'm very transparent. My wife calls it oversharing, but I do default to that. I do not pretend this is for everybody. It is not. Frankly, we are, or I should say, I think I do my best work when I'm educating and not selling anything. I do not want to sell per se, and technically I'm not a salesperson, although I've been doing this long enough that I am fairly fluent in the terms and the issues we discuss and of interest. So what I'm going to share with you is the output of all that work up front. I took the name out. Hopefully it's not repeated in here, but this is one of my clients, Las Vegas, former machinist mate in the Navy, had been working as a building engineer. His wife, great manager, managed I'm trying to think, it's not a 7-Eleven, but a convenience store, if you will. And they wanted to look at options. He was tired of working for other people, fixing air conditioners, doing that sort of thing, what a building engineer would do, and wanted to leverage his wife. His wife had a lot of experience managing small companies, small teams. And so we worked through that, and I came up with 3 options, which typically is a little bit less, but that's, in their case, I found 3 options I thought would be good for them to take a look at. So again, you'll see this slide again. We'll talk about validation steps, business criteria, brands for consideration. Resources, I think one of the things I do really well with, and where my clients get a lot of assistance identifying people to help them get to the point of confidence. And that point of confidence could be, yeah, this is what I want to do, no way, or maybe next year. So these are attorneys. Dustin's an Army vet. Just a great guy. Houston is another. franchise attorney I've worked with consistently. Wendy is someone that can walk you through all the different type of financing options. And then obviously that's me about 50 pounds ago, so I'm not quite so large, just as ugly, but thankfully not so much ugly. Validation steps. I just like to point out, when I get to this with my clients, we're at the beginning of step one. Okay. Now with you guys, you're over here someplace. You're not even at step one yet. But my point is twofold. Number one, you should have a process for whatever you're doing, and that's what I help with, is to explain the process, help you develop in your mind your own model, your own process. Now you can use this one, or you can develop your own. It's important. What's important is you have a beginning and an end, right? The other thing is, because we're just introducing you to companies at this point, there's going to be a whole lot of time and a whole lot of people for you to ask questions. So at any point in this process, from where we meet to here, there's going to be time and opportunity to get your questions answered. And if you're not getting your questions answered, then in my world, that's a red flag. And that's one of the things I help identify for you. Business criteria. This is something I work with you. You know, what are your personal goals? You know, family first, lifestyle. I mean, the client I was working with very, very definitely has a small family, wanted to spend more time with the family. You know, he was working as an hourly worker, and, you know, some weeks he would be paid overtime, and other weeks he was barely getting his paycheck. So he wanted to achieve more of a stability. And then, you know, this was something else we talked about, you know, partnership. He and his wife wanted to partner on this. So, you know, again, you can work through this, or you can look through this. I think there's nothing quite so painful as someone reading a PowerPoint slide, but it gives you an idea of the types of information we tease out of the conversations, and then I use to assess different options. So typically I show 6 brands at the first meeting. In this case, he was in a little bit more of a financial, what's the word? He was a little, he made some unwise decisions, let's say, and it's not that there were no options. It was just, he may have less than most people I've worked with. What's most important is you have good credit. So that's something I can help with as well. But you know, these are 3 different options. Critter control, which is pest control, focusing on rodents, reptiles, snakes, that sort of time. Removal, and then repair. Next one, quick mount TV, a very, very interesting home installation service. You're installing TVs in homes and businesses. And then Two Guys No Truck, it's a moving business. Again, I'm not equipped right now to go into all the details, but I'll just explain, you know, this is just some very top level information. You know, how many units are out there, how many are operating. I should say, how many units are sold. What that's referring to is in addition to the units that are operating. So a fast growing franchise is going to have a lot more, going to show a lot more units that are sold but not yet operating, if that makes sense. This is fairly, they've put a lot of effort into building this up, and they're selling, I would say, annualized, they're probably selling 50 or 60 units a year right now. So they're growing, even though they've been around a long time, they're growing very quickly. This is the investment range. You're looking at 64 to 91,000, and then do they offer a veteran discount? They do, and if they advertise what that is, I will put that in. In this case, I think it's about $5,000. Do they make earnings claims? That's what item 19 is. Yes, they do. And then this is what they're looking for from you. Do you have $10,000 available? What should your net worth be? And by net worth, I mean all your assets minus all your liabilities. So that could be a retirement account, that could be a checking account, that could be stocks and bonds. It's whatever, it could be a house you have or an apartment. Minus what are your bills, right? Credit card, mortgage, that sort of thing. And then finally, royalty. What do they charge on a monthly basis? So you're looking about 7%. The only thing I want to point out here is I get it. These numbers can be very daunting, but let me just say there are a lot of resources. If you have a reasonable credit report, and by reasonable, I mean over 680, that are looking to invest in you, and that there are bank loans, there are SBA-backed loans, there are ways to leverage investments. There's all sorts of ways around that. Bottom line is don't let that get in the way of you making initial inquiries. And then I go into some more information about these, critter control. What do they do? What sets them apart, that sort of thing. I'm not going to read this off. Quick Mount TV, I'm not going to tell you what you can make, but I'm going to set you up to answer that question in your own mind. And then, two guys, no truck. And that's about it. I know I screamed through that, but let's see. Did I stop sharing there?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. But I did want to get through that and then just be available. If you had further questions, I certainly can talk more, or what I'd rather do is answer questions.
Well, who has questions for Steve? We know he's been here before and we know that he's a great guy. So does anybody have any questions? I'll go ahead and kick one off, Steve, because
Okay.
this is really fascinating, and later down the road, definitely, I think you and I are going to have a conversation for sure. But for these individuals who are transitioning out, and they're going to get their first W-2 job and things like that, like what indicators do you recommend of having that aha moment of maybe pulling the trigger and starting out their own franchise?
Um, what I've seen is a lot of people have never even considered that this could be a possibility, and or they don't realize the scope of things that are available, um, or they think, I'm coming out of the military. Maybe I've been really diligent about putting a little money away on the side. Um, those are kind of, the aha moments are, wow, I wonder if I could do this. Do I have the skills, or do I have the money? That sort of thing. I think those are, and then once you realize there are options out there that can fit a lot of different budgets, that can leverage the beauty. Let me take a step back. One of the beauties of the franchise system is they're not looking for technical experts. They're looking for people with a lot of the soft skills that veterans have. That you and by soft skills, just it things like teamwork, understanding how to work with people in a win-win situation, how to see a task to conclusion, being able to maintain focus, those type of things. There, a lot of the things that veterans don't realize, or people that are transitioning out of the service, is how many skills they do bring to the plate. Um, so I don't know if there's one particular, but aha moment. But I think anybody who wants to investigate maybe something out of the box um, might be worth a 15-minute phone call or so. I'm happy to do that and answer any specific questions.
I love it. I love it. You keep mentioning, having that military advantage and that, having our backgrounds is very, very important to the organization. How does having a business in a box philosophy, kind of like what you're talking about here, reduce that risk to veterans who've never really thought about running their own civilian company before?
Sure. Um, I mean, there. Let me try and touch on probably the top three. Number one, there are a whole lot of businesses, very similar businesses in a franchise that are non-competitive. So let's say you go in and you build, Clay's Burger Palace, right? There are plenty of burger restaurants in almost any place, right? But they're competitors, right? Now, let's say you buy into a McDonald's, or McDonald's is not a good example, but let's just say McDonald's. There are 4,000 owners, McDonald's owners, or their franchise outlets, and I would say that probably 95% of those owners would be open to a call with another owner. Um, the what so it's a very collaborative environment. So that's one thing I think any veteran can understand coming out of, thinking you don't have a lot of experience. Well, you're buying into a system with a lot of peers, if you would, and not competitors. Second, all risk. When you do your due diligence, I know maybe a big word, but all that means is making sure it can work, right? Again, there are all these other businesses that are very similar that you can look at, and they'll introduce you. We don't work with companies that don't introduce you to other franchisees. You're going to figure out who's successful and who isn't, and and get to know them to the point where you can determine if this is if you can do as well as this person or that. So that's another benefit. And then finally, these businesses are set up. They don't make money until you make money, right? If they don't have a whole bunch of successful franchisees, they're not successful, and so they are going to put the systems, the processes, and the people in place to make sure you have the absolute best chance of success, right? They don't guarantee anything, and neither do I, because at the end of the day, it comes back to what you put into the business. But they're going to do their darndest. Frankly, when you pay a franchise fee, which is a big fee up front, that doesn't really go to the bottom line. It pays for development costs for the business, where franchisees or franchisors make money is from franchisees royalties, which are the ongoing monthly payments. So they want healthy, successful, profitable franchisees so they can be healthy, successful, and um, you know, franchisor, and they're gonna pull on the oars just as hard as you will to get there. So
I
Good.
love it. We do have a question from Matt. Mr. Ashmore, go ahead, sir.
Hey, what's going on, Steve?
Not much.
Um, so my question is, let's say, you find a franchise, you buy into it, and things are going great. 10 years down, down the road, you decide for whatever reason, whether it be you're just tired of messing with it, you want to, fly off to a foreign country and retire, sitting in the sand, whatever the reason is, what does exiting it look like? Because it's not like you're just selling off your business because you're attached to a franchise. So like I guess, how do you get out of it?
Right. So that's a great question, and that's something you want to assess before you invest, right? Now, the vast majority of franchisors are going to have a clear-cut strategy, and they're going to say, you can sell it, but I mean, typically it's going to be either a right of first refusal or it will be they'll want to approve the franchisor or the franchisee you sell to. But it's something. That's the thing. A lot of people think about Chick-fil-A and think that's it for them, but they have a very different model. You don't own anything. All the businesses and the vast majority of franchises out there is you own it. It's yours to sell. It's yours to dispose of any way you want. But definitely that's something you want to look at up front.
I like that. That's actually something because I've researched franchising quite a bit. It's actually something I'm working on my master's on. And you brought up Chick-fil-A, right? It's like technically it is your business, but it's not. I know McDonald's kind of does the same thing. Like, you pick out the plot of land that they've assigned because I love that movie. I've watched it like 5,000 times. It's really fascinating what Ray Kroc did. But you really are opening up, avenues of true full-blown ownership, which is fascinating versus some of the other franchising organizations out there. So I really do, there's definitely, a really, quite frankly, huge opportunity for these veterans, 2 to 5 years later down the road, they're making the reasonably good money, to sit there and do it. You know, but the big thing is that, you're a Navy guy, I'm an Army guy, we got a bunch of Air Force and Navy and a few Army people here. We had clear missions, but with very little personal freedom. As a franchise owner, what would be your best recommendations if someone wanted to go down this road to balance that discipline of a proven system with the freedom being the one who's in charge?
Yeah, I mean, so my best advice. So let's say, Clay, you're investing in. I want to come up with a better example than McDonald's. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's what came to mind because they're the 400-pound gorilla in it.
right. But so let's say you buy into a McDonald's, and I know something about McDonald's, but um, let me just cut to the chase here. My recommendation to any new franchisee is spend the first 3 6 months, whatever, becoming the best franchisee of that business. And that means learning their way of doing things, being an expert, and being a good corporate citizen. I mean, I know it's your business, but it's a partnership, right? Just be the best you can and take the advice. Now, there's going to be more and more opportunity the longer you own it to add your own secret sauce. No pun intended. Um, and a lot of your early success is going to be around how well you supervise people. And there's no corporation in the world that I've found that can tell an individual, especially an owner, a better way to manage their people. But start out learning the system, being good at it, and then and start adding your secret sauce. There's going to be plenty of opportunity, but frankly, you're paying for a system. You're paying ongoing fees and an upfront fee. Don't do
That's
that if you're going to run your own. You're going to want to do everything yourself. Elon Musk, great as he is, he would be a crappy franchisor or a franchisee, right?
you, you brought up you. I was going to sit there and say someone like Elon Musk or someone who's very process driven, but process driven in their own way. If you have someone who's a little bit more unconventional, like what do you recommend in grounding them besides what you just said? Do you sit there and you're just cold, honest truth, like, hey, don't do this, or is it like you're trying to guide them a little bit?
Yeah, I would say if you feel like that's where self knowledge comes in. So if you look at yourself and say, you know what, I'm the smartest guy in the room, um, 99% of the time, that's probably a red flag for a franchisor, right? Um, so yeah, I just think you're investing too much money in something to not believe in it. Does that make sense? I mean, you go into a McDonald's. If you're going to buy a McDonald's, you better be convinced this is going to make you money, right? And you don't buy a McDonald's and say, you know what, your burgers are too small. I'm going to buy burgers that are 50% bigger. No, they've got a whole system. And most franchisors are like that. Not 100% all the stuff. Like McDonald's, they dictate the size of the straw, the type of the tiles, the napkins. They dictate everything. They've got a very, very detailed business plan. Most franchisees or franchisors aren't quite so specific, but even so, they do make recommendations. And again, if you're gonna start the relationship by creating your own business out of what they give you, I would question your investment sense.
I love that. I love it. There's obviously a lot of, trying to do a financial recon to this, wanting to do it. What are common ways, to fund a franchise while draining a life savings? There's obviously some incentives out there for like seed money, and then there are SBA programs, but like what should they be really digging into if they're going to think about, pursuing this financially?
Yeah, I think first off is credit score, because that's what I see a lot of times is people that have let their credit score slip for whatever. I mean, life happens. I get it, but work on repairing that before before you investigate too deeply, because that's going to be probably the primary determinator, like what kind of financing you can get. And so that would be a no-brainer in my world. But save money, do what your parents taught you. Save money. I think home investment is a good thing. I mean, there are ways to leverage the equity in your house. Put money in 401k or thrift savings plans, that sort of thing. That can be invested on a very tax advantageous basis on a business. You essentially invest in yourself. I mean, that's, a Roth. I mean, you can use that. There's all sorts of things you can do, you can leverage. And let me take a step back. You may not be able to do a Roth, but there are IRAs you can leverage.
I was about to say, I don't think the tax rules a lot for a Roth, but I think you're right. So, but anyways, my man Chris in Florida. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, what's going on, Steve? Hey, do you have to have credit? Like, for instance, like I know like Dave Ramsey, for instance, like he's like anti-credit, right? And there might
Right.
be people that have hundreds of $1,000s saved up. Like I got friends that they follow Dave Ramsey and they don't touch credit and stuff like that. And they might have a couple 100,000 saved up. Like, can you just pay cash and get started without having to use credit at all?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's, I would say that's the majority of my clients. I yeah, I think we were talking about credit because that was the question, and then I just fixated on that. But yeah, I mean, credit is just one vehicle. If you got cash, cash is always best. Um, I'm not gonna argue with Dave Ramsey. He's a very smart guy, and yeah.
You can't argue with the Bible, though. I mean, he bases it off of biblical principles. So I love Dave Ramsey's concept. So I will say that.
Yeah,
But I also understand
I
credit too and
yeah.
leveraging
I
it. Yeah.
I think one of the things my wife's very financially cognizant. She's and she always goes back to college where she had a professor that said, never take a loan to pay for a depreciating asset. And I think of that all the time. Like I invested my own money in my first business I started, and it was an appreciating asset, but like a car, you know, that's probably not a good thing to take along. Anyways, we could talk forever about this.
Some people have strong opinions either way about Dave Ramsey, so that's for sure. But let's and I know that there's a few people in here, and I'm already looking at the list of who's probably thinking about this. The side hustle reality check for someone who's in a demanding W-2 role. How many hours a week does a semi-absence-free franchise actually require? Is it a realistic side hustle, or is that a myth?
Um, wow, that's uh, I think well, two things. I don't think it's a total myth. I think there are options out there, but it depends on the individual, right? Um, and I'll give you an example. Let's say you're working, you're a firefighter, right? And you regularly have full days off at different times, something like that. I think it would be much more easy uh, to have a side hustle, have a business, because you've got time off during the week occasionally, that sort of thing. Now, if you had a 9 to 5 job, and frankly, I haven't found a lot of 9 to 5 jobs that are actually 9 to 5. Monday through Friday, that might be a little more challenging. But again, it depends on the business too. I mean, that's one of the things I work with people to understand them to the point where I can make some referrals to businesses that would, work well with whatever your particular situation is.
And that's interesting. Like you brought up critter control, right? Because I'm in Colorado, and I know two of the franchisees that work with them, and they do have, obviously can be a weekend heavy business sometimes, so it can be done, but it definitely is something to where if you're, if you can make the time, do it, everything like that. I do want to get kind of like the legacy building on it. You eventually sold your majority interest in your first franchise. How, can you explain how building that, business created that generational wealth in a way that even the high paying W-2 jobs at a company like Logitech never could?
Yeah, I think, I think a couple things. Like, I never worked as hard as I did when I worked for myself, but at the same time, I don't feel like I'm working, honestly. Even now, I mean, this is my business. I enjoy what I do. I decide what I'm going to do on a day-to-day basis, and I mean, where was I going with that? My point is when we talk about generational wealth, I always think in terms of, gee whiz, I got to go to my kid's soccer game. There was never any dispute if I decided to coach something, who was going to take off at 3, or if it was acceptable for me to go. So I kind of look at that a little more holistically, if you will. The other thing is it depends on your objectives, right? That's something I work with. What are your objectives? What are your goals? Is it just to provide a income stream, or do you want to build something that comes to pass down to your family when it comes time for you to retire? That sort of thing. So I know I may be a little all over the map, but the thing is, as owning your own business, you kind of control your own destiny in a way. When I worked for Logitech, great company, loved them. But someone else determined what my bonus was. Someone else determined, what my job looked like. Whereas as a business owner, I decided I didn't want to do accounting, for example. I suck at accounting, so I hired someone. So to me, that's important, and then is more important than anything. It's just having the control over my life, and obviously I've got to make a living, put food on the table, those sort of things. But generational wealth to me is having 3 healthy kids that are making their way in the world, moving forward. So.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, is that you're putting in a lot of time, energy, effort into all of this. Like, what sort of legacy do you want to leave for your kids? Because there is, just this massive opportunity in the world. And on the other hand, a lot of people just sit there and think that, oh, it's an easy ride. Like, I think we keep going back to food just because it's lunchtime for me. I remember a couple of years ago reading in the news about a franchisee company that really sat there and just tore apart a bunch of people, and people were kind of left out on their own. And it was another burger company, smaller chain thing like that. So, like, what cautionary tales do you have for, individuals that are looking to do this?
Yeah, cautionary tales. Yeah, I would be looking and talking to other franchisees, looking, find people that are aligned with you. If you can't find those people in the franchise, maybe it's a good idea to look at others. Look at multiple franchisees or franchisors at the same time so you can compare and contrast. Look, how big is the franchise system? Are there a lot of successful franchisees in there? Or, what kind of churn have you seen? Are they selling, 20% of their franchisees selling every year? Those are all things I look at and I'm interested in. I do the smell test, right? Is this something that smells right? Does it look right? What's the old story? If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck, right? And if you find a business and you like the other owners, you appreciate and understand what they do to make money, and think you can do it again or repeat that success, then I think that's something to take into account. I don't know. I mean, it's a very subjective question. I tend to I mean, just on the big picture, a lot of people want to get objective information, and there are disclosures to provide that, and there are ways to get that objective, you know, the numbers, how much profitability, that sort of thing. What a lot of people don't understand is it comes down to subjectives. It's relationships too, and it's where it's easy to look at numbers. It's more difficult to assess if this is something, if this is a business you want to get involved with, are these people you want to be in business with, that sort of thing. And I think that's kind of my sweet spot. So I don't know, Clay, did I answer that question?
You did. You did. It is. You brought up. I know we keep going back to herder control because you brought that up and everything like that. And I did just drop your YouTube video on the chat as well, so that way guys can watch it as well. But like, what are those hot opportunities for franchising besides fast food? Because fast food's fast food. There's 10,000 companies out there. Like, what's your hot button? Like, what have you seen the best success with?
Well, I'm gonna that's not an easy question to answer,
I'm
but let me
known
try.
for the hard hitting questions. There's a reason why Jordy keeps me around. I apologize.
So let me try and answer it. So what are the hot opportunities? That depends on people and what their goals and objectives are, what their taste for adventure is, that sort of thing. Now, let me reframe the question. What do I like? Fast food, everybody associates fast food with franchises. Yeah, they're about 30% of the book of business we represent. So, roughly 110 out of 330. No, what is about 100 out? Anyways, it doesn't matter. But my point is the other 70% of companies are non-food related. And what do I like? I like home services. They're dramatically less to get involved in, with like a pizza kitchen typically costs 500 to 750,000 to build from scratch. A home service company you could put together, well under 100,000. Food margins are famously tight. You're usually dealing with teenage employees and all those things which keep me up at night, right? Home service company, you typically make much better margins, like 2-3 times the margins sometimes you would on a fast food restaurant or a food restaurant. So I like that. You also tend to have much fewer employees, and especially when you start. So I like that. So lower investment, higher margins, lower overhead. Marketing tends to be a little more straightforward. I like that. There are a lot of good companies out there that take a lot of that off your plate. So a lot of the day-to-day, semi-absentee situation is more possible. So those are the things I look at. I mean, I'll give you an example. Things, like pet waste collection. There's a lot of money in dog poop. And I know this sounds like I'm going a theme here, but another one I like is there's a company that sells high-end mobile restrooms. And so by high end, I mean hot and cold running water, internet, those type things. And then they rent them at venues like concert venues, party venues, wineries, that sort of thing. I love that because you basically drop it off on a Friday and pick it up on a Sunday night or a Monday morning. What else? There are businesses that do business with the military, doing, type things, putting up kiosks in exchange parking lots, that sort of thing. I like that because, frankly, a lot of my clientele is veterans, and they're very comfortable and have access to bases. So, you know, those are all things I've seen. I think they can be very successful.
I love it. High-end bathrooms. All right, there we go. There's my idea that I'm going to pitch to my wife tonight after she gets home after the day. But marketing services. There's a lot of different avenues you can sit there and go across. Do you see something in the future that you guys are trying to hang on to and trying to work through the franchise system that is sort of undervalued right now at the moment, or like sort of you're trying to get ahead of the curve on?
That's a good question. You know what? I see. I think one of the key words is it Amazonable or not? And if it is, we stay away from. And that's I'm trying to think of some examples of that, but I'll give you another example, just in the technology realm. There are a lot of business. You talk about large businesses. Let's whatever, IBM, let's say. There's a lot of people that want to sell to IBM, right? Or General Motors or that type of thing. There are a whole lot less people that want to provide services to the mom and pop grocery stores, the smaller $20 to $30 million businesses. Accounting services. I know most of you aren't accountants, but there's PricewaterhouseCoopers, there's Deloitte and Touche, that sort of thing. But they don't return calls for small and medium-sized businesses. That's a long way of saying I'm looking for businesses that want to do businesses with the vast majority of businesses, which are small and medium-sized businesses in this country, not the companies that want to go after the General Motors and the IBMs of the world.
Got it. 1000%. I am going to sit there and go ahead and wrap this up. But Steve, it was actually a pleasure to be able to chat with you and facilitate a conversation with you. This has been eye-opening for me, and Matt was very interested. We've had several others very interested, so it's definitely something that I'm going to consider later down the road in my career. But let's go ahead and give Steve a round of applause from BravoZulu for joining us yet again. And Steve, I look forward to chatting with you in the future, sir.
Yeah, as well. I think all my contact information is out there. If you got more questions or you want to go, just set up. The easiest thing is to set up a time. And if you can't find one on my calendar, text me. I'll figure it out. So I'm happy to chat at any point.
I dropped your LinkedIn in the chat. But again, Steve, from the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for your time today. I do greatly appreciate it. Thank you for your time as always, sir.
Thank you.